how can you improve your conditions of life? Let's say you live in India, in the third world, or let's say you're fat, or let's say you struggle with procrastination, or as we know it, in this world there are premium things and there are cheap things, right? So on each side of the balance, there will always be people of both sides, right? People who have and people who don't have. So what makes the people who have the thing we apparently want, because we'll always want something, and how do we actually get it, right? Because there are things when once you get it, perhaps you don't consider yourself to be worthy of them. So how do we cope with that as well? And another question would be, how do we become this person who is constantly in motion, in flow, on getting the things we want most in life? And I would start by saying that the reason most people don't get what they want out of life is because their behavior is unconscious. Most of our lives is unconscious. So we need to bring into our awareness, into everyday awareness, what we're doing unconsciously on autopilot, right? And let's not forget that we are the sum of our habits. And I would like to have a look at this as well. So the main problem I would say, or the main obstacle, is that we are governed by these habits, right? And often they are made unconscious. We do them because it's easier for us. It's like a shortcut we take. But what's the price for that shortcut? The price is that the time passes and we reach an age or a threshold, or we encounter an obstacle and we wish we would have done things better in the past. So now in the present we have multiple options, so we can take a better course of action. But what stands in the way becomes the way, as Marcus Aurelius said. And let's find a way on how can we better target this problem, because it's mostly perception and your beliefs that are in your way. Don't forget this, right? Perception and your beliefs. And how can we start? What's the tipping point where we take control of the life and we actually turn the things in our favor, right? And we don't just go along with life as events come to us. So before you run into the video, let's have a look at this obstacle that's gonna come in your life, into everybody's life. And I would say is mostly, it seems to be like a surface problem with a deeper meaning behind it, right? We have, let's say, limited choices or not enough room for expression. And we reach the final conclusion that it was better to do things a little better in the past, so we can have now the multiple options we needed. Right? Okay, let's say somebody moves abroad and they have limited money. What do? It was better for them to save the money 1 year prior before the move, or to work harder on their business and make more sales, more conversions. But the problem they now face is of the nature that they didn't put in the work because they didn't see the obstacle coming, right? And now they wish a change of things or a better course of action, and they don't have it. Knowing that life is mostly preparation for the future is our duty, our mission, and I'd rather say is of our discipline to be prepared, right? We need to do things in a right way, where we have options and backup plans. Although it's better to have no plan, but at times it's better to have a plan B. Always, especially when you're dealing with variables, when you don't really see the outcome. And especially when somebody don't believe in themselves. So what do we do then? What's the trick here? What's of a higher importance that can change the things in your favor? Well, so far we know is being prepared, right? You need preparedness in your life. You need to be prepared. Second of all, you need a better self-image. And third, you need changed beliefs. And we're gonna start with a tipping point in mind. So we all have a tipping point. What a tipping point is a situation that changes the course of action. But for us to have this tipping point, what we need is an obstacle, right? Alright, so we have the obstacle, we have the tipping point of the scale, or the balance, I would say. There we go. Okay, so we have the obstacle, we have the tipping point, and this leads to change. Change of any nature. And what's this balance? It's your vision and your action. Okay, this is how it goes. You have your obstacle, you have your tipping point, and then you have the change, right? Vision and action, right? And this is your tipping point when you start to make a change with your life. So the obstacle is what most people encounter that pushes them to change. But you don't need an obstacle in order for you to change. So when you have a bigger obstacle, it's gonna put more weight on the scale here, and you will need to change to counterbalance and have that sit on a tipping point. And you will make the change with what life throws at you by using your vision and taking action so you can compensate for the change. This is where you move and you play with the tipping point by taking action and using your vision so you can motivate yourself and actually take action so you can counterbalance the obstacle that just popped into your life. Now, there is a question to this. What causes the tipping point to force us make a change? And the answer to this question is that there are two things you need to consider. First of all, there are obstacles of internal nature, what we believe about ourselves. And second of all is outside nature, things you can't control, things you can't really understand how they work or their nature. There are events like accidents or trauma or some other stuff that happens without our control. So we have these obstacles. Let me write here, internal. Okay, we have internal and external obstacles. So when we encounter an obstacle of internal or external nature, we either change the vision or take action. With other words, we change what we want or we change how we do things. Now, the change can be big change, a small change, and also efficient, right? So the change can be either big or small, efficient or inefficient. And what you need to know here is that the change you make is based on your level of awareness. Okay? And here you have it. Right, so based on the level of your awareness, if you make small, inefficient changes, that's fine. It's still a change. But if you make small and efficient changes, that's even fine. That's even better. But the next degree is that if you make big changes, but they are inefficient, it's still fine, but it's better than small ones. What you aim for is big and efficient changes. Remember, this is based on the level of your awareness, right? So it's awareness dependent. So your main mission when you have an obstacle is to raise the level of your awareness based on what you want to achieve. Because everything you do, this is your action points. This is your action quadrant. What you need to do is to make big and efficient changes. But that's not going to be what happens despite your intent. If your level of awareness, that is of what you know of the thing, of your obstacle, and what you have to change is small. The next question I have is, how can one raise the level of awareness when they have an obstacle, which can be internal or external? Let's define this even better. Internal is like you have a low self-image, you know you have it, and you want to improve it. Right, that is you fat because that's what everybody said to you and you came to believe it. And now you want to change that. And now you have an obstacle. You want to become somebody you're not. That's perfectly fine. Many people do that. So here we have an obstacle. This creates an obstacle, creates friction in your psyche. And so this creates a tipping point where you want to counterbalance the obstacle with the change, right? Which can be small or big, efficient or inefficient. And we know the fight is given between vision and action. We want to maintain a constant balance. So this fight is given between the self-image and what you do to reinforce that self-image, because your self-image is not going to change. It will change what you do. But everything you do, your subconscious mind will never want to change the self-image. It will want to, everything you do, match that self-image. So remember, because this is why we have the tipping point. I'm sure I've said that earlier, but it's perfectly fine even now because it makes more sense in the context. Right, so we have the internal conflict, which is our obstacle, and we now want to counterbalance the change, right? Vision, action. Let me write here self-image. This is your self-image tipping point. Again, we have our obstacle, the tipping point, and now you want to counterbalance the change. You have an internal conflict, let's say fat, broke, etc. Wherever you are in this life, on this tipping point scale, or how you see yourself, you will want to improve yourself. And so you will have, in a way, friction, I would say. And we're going to regard them as internal conflicts or obstacles. For let's say somebody's fat or broke or whatever they want to improve in their life. Even if you go to the gym and you want to have a six-pack, or even if you want to make more money in your business, it's still of an internal nature. But what the external says is these are the events, right? Events we gotta deal with to become stronger as man. This is what life throws at you, and you gotta take it head on, right? With your chest forward and your head up. We know that the obstacles can be internal and external, and we've defined those. Now we create a tipping point. That is, we create friction in here. So this puts more weight on the obstacle in the favor of the obstacle, and less on the change. So we define a new self-image, and we want to act based on that self-image with big or efficient actions or small and inefficient actions. And we have like an internal friction gauge, I would say. So that's your subconscious mind trying to maintain your self-image, right? By not counterbalancing the self-image, that is removing internal and external events and trying to compensate for them with the lowest amount of friction, that is trying to get away from the conflicts, getting into debt and never paying those, or trying to stay away from some friends, or trying to avoid the conflict so you can maintain your self-image. But consciously, that's not what it should be happening. So you want to take conscious control and you want to create the change. Right. Let's see now how this change can take place based on the level of our awareness. Let's take first the small changes. A small action would be taking action but disregarding the self-image, that is trying to force it from outside. As in a previous video when we talked about mechanical repetition until that becomes your identity. If you have something to do, if you have a process, that becomes your reward. You can work on your business like a crazy horse and still achieve amazing results without taking a break, because your reward is coming from a deep place of fulfillment where you have meaning and you have strong enough reasons to bypass your limbic system, your limbic brain, that is, okay? And it all started with a mechanical drive. And as soon as you do this, everything becomes effortless because it's your identity. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy. It's very hard to do. But this is the loop you need to reinforce in yourself. So what a small action would be is taking action, trying to reinforce the self-image by doing the thing without meaning, in a way. Okay, so we have the forced change despite our self-image. This is of a small nature because it's gonna fail. No matter what you trying to get away from being fat or trying to make more money. If you force the change despite considering your self-image and the fact that your brain and your subconscious mind will want you to do everything in your power to stay at this level because it doesn't want to change. Because change equals death, alright? Because the brain works on reliability. What worked in the past has kept you alive, really. And this is what the brain thinks and this is what it does unconsciously. So whenever you try to change, change equals death. Therefore, we have a forced change, that is something you want to do, and you put your brain or neuronal pathways at risk, and they believe change equals death. We know why now. And that, in a nutshell, is your self-image. Your brain is your self-image. That, with other words, it controls how you see yourself and how it sees itself. Because remember, the way I see it is the brain is separate of yourself, right? You have the limbic and your reptilian brain, and those two control you to a large extent, right? So that becomes your self-image. And so we have the change as being small. When you force it on yourself, you try to become somebody you're not. And obviously, it's like motivation, right? So this becomes motivation, I would say, is small and efficient. That's motivation, okay? Small efficient is motivation. And small inefficient is mechanical repetition. So we have the small efficient is motivation, but the motivation is for the moment. It doesn't act at the level of your self-image. So motivation, for me at least, is against your self-image because it's for the moment. It pumps you up with hormones, but it's not long-lasting. And a small inefficient action to change when you have your obstacle is mechanical repetition. So when you're fat, you're trying to go to the gym, but it's gonna fail. Even motivation is gonna fail, right? When you have this internal friction, it's gonna fail because you don't see yourself as the person who's actually got the muscles or the habits of eating healthy, and also the habits of drinking water, and also the habit. Do you see where I'm going with this, right? So you don't consider yourself the person who's gonna make the millions just yet, or the person who's gonna have the car just yet. And you try to get it through motivation means, and also mechanical repetition, that is forcing yourself to make more money, forcing yourself to call when you should call your customers to make more money. Or mechanical repetition, what else? Depriving yourself of food, basically, so you can lose weight, or trying to mechanically go to the gym and try all the equipment and then fall flat for 2 weeks because now you're tired and you have to start from zero because you've lost the momentum, right? So that's a small inefficient action, and you do this because your brain is designed to improve your self-image regardless of what you do. Now we have the big and inefficient change. Big and inefficient change would be taking this time aligned action with your self-image. And here is where things can change, okay? Right, let's define big and inefficient change. Well, what would that be for somebody's life, right? And the first thing that comes to my mind is that they're trying to put too much on the plate, way too much on the plate, right? They announce it on social media, they build 5 trackers, they make a rigid schedule, and they try to do what they haven't done in a lifetime. All of a sudden, it's like a motivation, but in this case it's inefficient, right? But big, because it's taken to the next level of extremes. So BI is, that is big and inefficient. Let's say high complexity and friction. Okay, so here we have the high efforts, high complexity, and high friction change, but is aligned with the self-image. Why? Because you put yourself on a platter where you can't really back up, right? You announce everybody what you want to do, and you establish within yourself what you want to achieve. But you will need a lot of willpower to maintain this, right? So for me, it's inefficient. It can be efficient though considered inefficient because it's gonna take time. Got it? But it will work for some people, despite how long it's gonna take. They will go through it and still get a thing, right? So this is aligned action with the self-image still, but it requires more time for your brain to believe it. So we have a high effort, complexity, and friction that make the change big and inefficient. So for example, you try to become a new person by sheer willpower. So you're trying to make a big change, like big routines or strict discipline, but your identity is still the same, literally. Although your self-image is changing. So what else people do when they have aligned action with the self-image, but the action is inefficient and is big on the other side, is when you debate it, you justify it, you post it, you argue about it, and most importantly, you look for validation. So what this creates is pressure and ego validation. You want people to see and to look up to you for who you are, for the new person. But this often replaces real execution, right? So you build a massive system like 12 habits, 6 apps, 3 trackers, a new diet, a new training split, a new business model, a new content plan, but you do it all at once. It is big indeed, but complexity creates friction, and so consistency dies. You watch 40 hours of content, buy courses, research gear, you take notes, you refine your strategy, but your action stays small. While it feels productive, your output is very small. Again, I'm repeating about the motivation. So when you take big inefficient action, your motivation spikes, but your identity is not aligned. While yes, it's true, you create movement, but it's costly, it's unstable, and usually needs constant pain to maintain. And so the reason it's inefficient is because it requires high effort, high emotional load, and is also high friction on your psyche. You have a low sustainability, and there is also a risk of relapse. Alright, because you're spending 10 units of energy for 2 units of real change in a way. And here we find the people who say, tomorrow I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m, gym daily, cold plunge, no sugar, I'm gonna upload 2 videos a week, I'm gonna read 10 pages of a book and meditate for 60 minutes. Or you try to fix your confidence on camera by recording 3 hours a day, while internally you know you're not the authority yet, and this clashes with your self-image. But it's big enough, right? Because you take enough action. There is movement, but there is no action. Right. And then we have the big and efficient action. Remember, we're taking aligned action with the self-image. So if you really want to change, despite the level of your awareness, is to take big and efficient action. And that big and efficient action is visualization in your mind's eye. That's what you have to do. If you want to alter the self-image, if you want to be stronger than your obstacles, if you want to see yourself differently, you will have to start giving your subconscious mind a new image of yourself. There is Brian Tracy, there is Bob Proctor, there is Earl Nightingale, and we go back in the 19th century, 18th century, New Thought leaders who clearly say, by visualizing yourself doing certain things, you become that person to actually do, have, and behave in that certain manner. So it's your duty now, if you want to have, regardless of your obstacles, either internal or external, it doesn't matter. Your obstacle can be of any nature, but your change can be big and efficient when you start visualizing yourself. The main helper in this equation here is that your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and what's fake or what's false or fantasy in a way, right? So it takes literally. So when you start visualizing yourself, as this new person who's taking a different kind of action, your brain will start to believe that you are the person who's actually doing the things. And what's going to do, it will create within your body the neurochemicals that's gonna make you act as the person who already has those things. Let's take, for example, the fact that you like somebody, either Elon Musk or let's say another authority figure, and you want to become like them. As soon as you set the intention and you start seeing yourself as talking like them, as behaving like them, you will get the traits of those characters. Those even can be a fictional character as well. And you will start talking like those people because you, in your brain, as soon as you see somebody behaving, doing in a certain way, you are aware in a way that you can do what they do. And what helps you here most is your mirror neurons. And with them, you can emulate any kind of behavior regardless of your obstacles. You can become somebody else by seeing yourself being somebody else. The only drawback here is that the past conditioning has changed the level of your awareness to a very small and inefficient one, I would say. And so it's harder for you to maintain the momentum of you seeing yourself doing and taking action where you bypass the obstacles. And so this becomes your biggest problem, right? It becomes your inertia. It's like a magnet where you created this ball of energy where whatever you want to do, you can't get away from the constant magnetic pole, right? From the core that keeps attracting you back, like keeps attracting the change to whatever you want to make. It will reinforce the self-image. But by acting in this core, in this magnetic core, right? Just imagine this is a magnetic core, plus and minus. Okay, it will keep attracting you back. But when we act with big and efficient changes right in here, this will be our points of action. When you have these points of action, when you start changing yourself from within, then everything changes. And you will start by seeing changes in your life. But everything starts with the way you feel about yourself and about the events you experience outside. Never forget this, right? Constantly monitor how you feel, the level of feeling, how positive or negative you're feeling, right? Remember, we talked about vision and action because this is the tipping point and what creates this balance and the self-image, right? A big and efficient action is your vision because it pulls you from the inside, right? It pushes you in the same time through these points of action at the same time. And then you can make the change in your life, right? This is how you can induce the change in yourself based on the level of your awareness. And the crazy thing is like a constantly reinforcing loop is that your level of awareness, despite of what you currently know and what you're capable of doing, will change if you start employing the vision as envisioning yourself being the person as being big and efficient action. So your level of awareness will raise, okay? And you will constantly be aware of what you can do, right? You will be aware of what you can see and you will look at the same things with a different perspective. Just like Einstein said, you can't solve a problem at the same level of mind that's been created. So you need to become a different person with a new level of the mind, a new level or a raised level, right? Where you raise your awareness, basically. So let me write here. So big and efficient action is visualization. That's what you have to do. Right, let's have a look at the athletes. What happens in their minds, basically? Because most of them do visualize. So the number one reason most athletes visualize is that so they never get surprised. No moment will shock them. You need to be mentally sharp and mentally prepared for everything that's gonna show up in your life. That's how you build a strong confidence, a strong mindset. And because of this, most people crack under pressure, under things that life throws at them. And the best way to visualize is you don't paint yourself a clean path, but rather you paint yourself a picture in your mind where you do the thing and you encounter something unexpected like picking up, you visualize and you know how to deal with it properly. So as an athlete, as a businessman, as somebody who wants to change or somebody who wants to get the next level of awareness, is the moment you see in your mind's eye that you have an obstacle and then you direct yourself to perform to your best despite that obstacle, and knowing how to handle that obstacle effectively will aid you in whatever you want to do. And it works. It will change. This is how you fundamentally change who you are, right? So you picture yourself mess up or breaking something, and what you want to do is to see yourself going through that. So what you basically do as a bottom line is you make yourself familiar with the thing you want to change at yourself, okay? you want to do a change, you want to get over the obstacle, is either internal or external. So you visualize yourself as the person who deals with the obstacle, and now you're getting familiar with them so you can actually keep the balance properly, right? And when you actually meet the change and you ready to make an improvement or ready to take on a challenge, what you have to do basically is to visualize yourself as being the person who actually goes over these obstacles, as already being the person. And the trick is to not project too much into the future if you don't believe that you can actually do and achieve that thing. So you have to project yourself on the next step forward, right? Not project yourself too much into the future where you can't see possibly, because that's not gonna help you. That's actually a small and inefficient change because it doesn't match up with your self-image, and you will have to constantly shoot for the next step up in order to compensate for your obstacle, in order to tip the balance. But constantly monitor the level of how you feel when you do this change. You will have to feel good in a way, right? Don't use your willpower, never. Imagination will always win over the willpower, as Emile Coué said in his book. So you want to alter the self-image through the use of your imagination. You visualize yourself the next step forward, right? If you have a match coming up, a boxing match, you visualize yourself winning that, right? Visualize having stamina and visualize having everything you need to have in place in order for you to win that, okay? If you consider yourself fat, if you at least go to the gym and spend time in there, you don't need to lift anything. You can also visualize yourself as going in the gym and actually practicing and being helped and being offered advice. Then that's a different change, because you compensate from the internal change and also with the external change where you actually go into the gym and start taking it slowly. But you use your imagination in order for you to achieve effectiveness. Got it? And this can also apply to making money. The same goes. So you picture yourself working out your business. You don't imagine the numbers just yet, although it's a good practice, but you will need to believe it. How do you know you believe it? How good does it feel to you? If it doesn't feel good, then you don't believe it. If you feel good about it and you believe it's actually achievable with the help of the universe and you believe in a higher power than yourself, then that feels good, then you believe it, right? That's how it goes. So you will need to visualize what feels good for you, because that drags you forward. Got it? And this is the secret. And now we know whatever obstacles you have, either external or internal, you want a better degree of life and a lifestyle, you will have to make big and efficient change by using your visualization, right? By using visualization, we actually create from the points of action. We are becoming, we are not doing now, right? And when you create from this big and efficient standpoint, you are actually becoming somebody else. In this process, your actions will not be changed overnight. You're not gonna take big actions overnight. No, that's not working like that. So what you need to do instead is keep your mind on the goal, take small steps and keep your mouth shut. Talk to nobody, because they're gonna dilute your energy. So, there is a clear point here, brother. You must not talk to anyone about your plan. Talk to nobody and say to nobody what you want to do or what you want to achieve. When you do that, you seek external validation. That drags you down. It's gonna offer you the sense of ego, which is, in a large degree, it's not something you wanna have for the long term. It's good, it's healthy, but you need to know how to polish it. But before that, you'll need to be very careful to have your ego get the satisfaction just by talking about what you're about to do, or about your obstacles, or by the nature. So if you wanna change, if you want to make more money, if you start a business, if you start something else, keep your mouth shut and get to work. That's the best way to create a change. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.